Hi, I'm Greg at Anglers All, and I'm going to tie a crystal spinner, little rusty spinner that works really well. Kind of run through materials real quickly. We have some hooks from Tiemco, some 100, and this is a size 16. And next we're going to lay down some thread from Vivas. This happens to be the 14-aught in a rusty spinner coloration. Next thing we'll tie in are some microfibettes from John Betts. And then we're going to put in a rusty spinner, colored goose biot. These are from Nature Spirit. And then for the wing, we're going to use a couple of things. We're going to use some Mirage accent flash and also some McFly which I have on the floor. I won't reach down to grab that. And then fill up this thorax at the end with some rusty brown superfine dubbing. So we'll get started here. My thread. Straight. Make sure your hook's on the vise nice and straight. Now I'm going to start my thread at about 3 eye widths behind the eye. That's just going to be a little measurement system for me so that when I go to mount this wing, I'll know where to start that. Then also, as I'm winding backwards, if you noticed I haven't cut my tag off of my thread when I first mounted that on. I'm going to use that to split these little fibettes. On an RS2, we'd probably use just 2 of these, but on this fly, I'm going to use 4. Just going to get 4 of those, cut them right off. And then on a spinner, usually the length of your, or I should say on most dry flies, the length of your tails are about the length of the body. But on a spinner, things kind of get a little bit elongated. These naturals haven't eaten for about 24 hours, so they do get a little bit longer. So I'm just going to run that a little bit longer than the length of the body, maybe 1 to 1.5 times the length of the body. So then with your thread, just first lay your fibettes down at about a 45-degree angle. Make a little soft wrap. On your second wrap, thread tension is going to bring that right at the top. Oops. Because we need all of those right on top of the hook. There we go. Now with my fingertip, I'm going to come in here and split this up. Make sure 2 are on each side. Pull this tag right in between. It's going to further enhance that split. And then I can wrap that in. Get this thread out of the way from my tag. Cut it all even there. Then I can just bring my thread right up to the starting point. And I can reach in here and cut all those little butts off. Now we'll bring the thread back just about halfway. I have pre-soaked one of these biots. I can kind of back up a little bit, and what we're doing here is I have picked off of this strip, I've picked one of the left biots, or I should say the biots from the left side. So what you do is you just kind of grab one of these pop that right off. And what you always want to do is start with this curve so that it goes away from you. And you notice that little notch, how that's sticking up. There's a little indentation and it goes right up. This happens to be a biot off the right wing of the leading edge of a goose. So if I wrap this one, we would have a body that would be very fluffy, and you'd see that those little ridges in there. Now this biot's been stripped off of the left wing. It's still curving away from me, but that little notch is straight down. I'm going to tie this in at the tip. Don't really need to create a little underbody on this because these flies are extremely thin at this point. I'll pick that up, grab it on my hackle pliers, and then I'm going to make this wrap over the top. And you'll notice that this body is going to be smooth with some very distinct barring. Run that up, tie that off. And the reason why I've soaked these too is that it keeps them from being too brittle. Much easier to wrap without breaking. At this point, I'm just going to come right back, right in front of that tie-in point. I've grabbed some of this McFly lawn, and I am just going to do one wrap at this point. Just lay it right there. Then I've grabbed the accent flash, mirage flash, midge flash, any of that would work. Do an unwrap, mix those all up, and I can lay that right back down. I want this bundle on top of the hook. I made 2 wraps. Then I'm going to turn this bundle perpendicular to the hook shank, and then from the front to the back I'm going to make 2 wraps. One wrap there to kind of seat it in place, and then from the back to the front, a couple of wraps, and that is nice and secure there. Now before I go any further, I'm going to grab a little Zap-A-Gap. It's a little trick I learned from some guide friends that I know. They put a little bit of Zap-A-Gap right there in the center. And normally we think of this spinner being fished as a dry fly, but you should try fishing this as a nymph sometime. Now by putting that little Zap-A-Gap in there, what that does is it stiffens up the wing right in at the tie-in point, so that when you're nymphing this thing, the wings don't fold back as easy and you got a nice little profile of that spent wing. So that's just a little trick that not too many people will talk about, but I would certainly give that a try. I've seen it work, and it's a fun way to change up your fishing during the day. So I'm getting a little bit of dubbing. You probably heard me talk a couple times if you watched any of the videos, that little bit of dubbing on a lot of thread. So the first couple wraps are going to be right behind the wing. By now that super glue or the Zappa gap has set in. I'm going to come back over the tie-off point of the biot, and then I'm just going to work this back forward. It's easy to catch our wing material. And then at this point I think I need just a pinch more dubbing. So I've brought that dubbing loop right in front of the wing, made a few more wraps, and then at this point I'm going to go from the front to the back a couple of times, bring it underneath, and go from the back to the front a little bit on there. Basically, just kind of use this all up. The reason why we kind of X that on is that because on the bottom side we're not going to see that white wing showing through at the thorax. Now at this point, we can just build ourselves a little head. And then whip finish. I think this fly will be done, other than trimming a couple of things. Now we're just going to whip finish this. Make sure their thread's nice and tight. Now we can just kind of trim these. Now, what I like to do is just pull them straight up. And when you make this cut, the wing should be about the length of the body, maybe a pinch longer. Again, this fly, at this point in its stage, is dehydrated and everything's elongated. So I'm going to make a quick cut. Yeah, that worked well. But that's cut. Now I want to go in and give this a little bit more of a natural look. So I'm going to trim the front edge of that wing off, just the back portion as well. Just that little back edge so it looks more natural. And then that is our crystal winged rusty spinner. And if you see here, you'll really be able to tell by putting in that glue. You can see how this wing is very stiff at this point. And if you did nymph that, those wings are going to stay in that position and attract the attention of the fish eating drowned spinners. So there you go. Have some fun with that fly.